Hi everyone, welcome to another installment of Dublin Tech Talks. As always, we're brought to you with the support of Icon Accounting. Icon have been in business in Ireland for many years now. They provide a whole range of services for independent contractors, and you can find all the information on what they do and how they can help on iconaccounting.com. I'm joined today by Garret Cassidy. Gareth is the CEO of Trezeo. Trezeo essentially provide a financial safety net for the ever-growing population of independent gig workers. And Gareth is going to talk to us today about the changes in that industry and how his business and his technology and platform are helping people. Hi Gareth, thanks for joining us today. Nice to see you again. How are you keeping?
Good, Dave. Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great.
We actually, interestingly, over the last year or so, have seen a rise in new businesses or products that are in some way, in that gig economy ecosystem. So, I know there's a whole load of talk about the future of work and how things are changing. But do you want to just tell us a little bit about, what it was that you guys spotted that, led to the birth of Trezeo?
Yeah. So myself and Flavian is my co-founder and CTO. We were working early on, probably back in late 2016 on financial services and kind of finance for micro businesses, self-employed freelancers. And it was really out of having that kind of customer conversations and interviews that we realized that a simple bank account or slightly better bank account for the cohort we were looking at wasn't really the challenge. So we were very quickly focused in on individual workers, so independent workers in the kind of broadest term. That's self-employed, that's gig workers, and really try to get deeply into understanding what their challenges were. And what that really highlighted was a couple of things. One, the challenge of not having an employer really, and not having that kind of wrapper around, now call it kind of safety net wrapper around something as fundamental as just not knowing how much you're going to earn any week. So the thing that was very clear with these people, with the vast majority of people, is they'd made a conscious choice to work this way because they wanted the flexibility. They wanted to set their own hours and not be there and not have a boss. But that meant they knew they were giving up a lot. They were giving up a huge stability, and therefore they were really at all earnings levels, and many of them were just struggled on that kind of week to week, month to month kind of churn of having enough money to cover bills, and then really not having the kind of other access to other financial products. So really struggling to go beyond a kind of basic bank account. So in Ireland, UK, Europe, it's not that they're unbanked, it's that they're underbanked. And the banks, and when you look the other side, the banks and insurers just don't know how to deal with it. They don't fit in the box of being either an employee or a traditional business. So it's just a real struggle. So that was kind of where we came at. And then we just worked on, well, what are the needs we need to solve? And the first one was kind of solving that kind of base level stability. And that's where a lot of people have heard of us around income smoothing and kind of helping people manage and kind of credit and lending. But that was really just a start. And then it's building a kind of a very comprehensive safety net for these workers. That's portable. So kind of portable, and it's really playing into your future work as more and more people work independently. More and more people have multiple earning sources. It no longer makes sense for these benefits to be attached to who they're working for, which is a big discussion in the who should protect who. And therefore it's a solution that they can own. It's theirs. They can take it with them, and then they can have the protection. And longer term, really, the vision is then that they can then access the normal financial services that are outside that. So they then do have the kind of financial profile that an employee would have, so that banks can engage. The risk profile is similar, and they can get mortgages, they can get other insurance, and have the same aspirations.
And has it been a consequence of, like, the world is changing in terms of how people engage and how people are employed or deliver services? And I on the one hand, it seems that the existing structure and organizations have been quite happy to push a lot of the employee risk away, and okay, we'll engage with you in that way, that suits us fine. But why has there been a reticence or a slowness to kind of build a new model or a new system that supports that?
So the old model was built probably nearly 100 years ago by the likes of Ford, Cadbury's, like large manufacturing companies who stepped in. You know, the government in the US and in the UK, say particularly, would have taken some element, but private business took a large element of that. But it was designed for large employment base. They engaged the products, and so it was all designed around that. I think there's probably two pieces at play. One, there is a very clear evidence that the vast bulk of people working this way. So yes, there's an impression that companies are pushing people this way, and clearly there's some of that. But actually, there's a demand coming from the other side to work that way as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's another angle to it that's clear: is we as consumers are pushing it as well. So we're pushing for this on-demand, always available, environment. That creates massive variation in demand and supply that wouldn't have been there before. We were all in the past willing to wait a week for something. That meant companies could smooth their demand out, or wait a month for something. We're not anymore. So that's driven a need for companies to do it, a need for companies to find more flexible ways of doing it, because they wouldn't be able to offer that service that way. But fundamentally, and this is a real problem, it's a policy problem, is a lot of the companies that are doing this are prevented from actually providing some of the protections, because that could result in a trigger of the worker being flipped to being, seen as an employee. And obviously there's a view that would be good, but there's also a view that would be bad, because the workers don't want it. The workers don't want to have a lot of the implication of that is shift work, only being able to work for one employer, being very limited, versus people on average 3, 4, 5 workers. So that's the kind of trade-off, and it is one there's a big kind of policy discussion that's going on and needs to go on. So Uber the CEO of Uber recently came out and said, they've said it before, things need to change. We want, and we are ready to make contributions towards this thing, but it has to be a standard way. Everybody has to be on the same level playing field. And laws need to change to enable it, because there's some issues in the US with actually doing it. So that's the kind of challenge. You're in this gray area of where do these people sit in terms of worker status? How do you create a new protection? So we're in that, I describe it as we're in that kind of almost that storming mode of change. Like you're almost that head bashing mode of new versus old, and old is trying to push new back, but it's like trying to push a rock uphill. And actually what we're very passionate about is this change is happening. There's a lot of good to the change. Let's put a structure in place to fix some of the downsides, and then people can really actually engage with it.
Cool. So I think while policymakers spend a decade trying to figure this out, you'll be well on your way to.
That's exactly it. So we want to, and we work with policymakers very heavily. So in the UK, we're part of a number of UK government initiatives, but policy changes slowly. So it's working with policymakers to make sure that we can do something that on balance isn't going to trigger things. It's in the workers' interest and gives them the appropriate it starts to build appropriate protections. And we work with the companies and platforms as well, because they actually, there's two sides. So, from a pure HR point of view, they have the same challenges of attracting talent, retaining talent, rewarding talent, but they're much more constrained with self-employed. So, and they also, as the Uber example shows, most of them recognize they have an obligation and want to find a way to discharge some of that obligation.
So come on to that in a sec. So if we just kind of break down your customer profile. So from an individual perspective, what is it that you can actually help? If someone's watching here today and said, look, I fit in that category, how can you help them? What is it that you offer?
So right now, we're very much focused on, and I'm going to use the blue collar. That's an unfair term, kind of skilled and semi-skilled rather than professions, as in our tradition professions. But we see cab drivers and couriers as professionals. They are professional drivers. So one of our core sectors at the moment is what we call professional drivers. So that's couriers or cab drivers. So in that world, if we take on the courier side, where they might be, and courier is delivery, so most of these professional couriers have migrated to the likes of Uber and Deliveroo, etc., because they actually get better pay, better flexibility, and better options. But their challenge is quite simply quiet weeks. So that things are cyclical. Weeks can be quiet, weeks can be busy. So the first bit we do is help them manage that variability of earnings. these workers at that level struggle to access affordable credit. So they are, in a recent study in the US, 80% more likely than an employee to use friends and family when they're in trouble, and 50% more likely to use payday loans, because that is reality, their only choice. So our service provides a first level of kind of credit, which both helps with the management of their earnings, but also helps build that track record so they can access credit. So that's one very concrete piece in terms of that concern around what happens if I have to take a day off to take my kid to the doctor, or in COVID land, what happens if I've got to take 2 weeks. So we've got people who are in this impossible position where if they can't work, they get nothing. They have no, very, very minimal state protection, which they have to wait 5 or 6 weeks for anyway. So we put them in this impossible position in COVID. So that's the first bit. And also then being able to build up buffers so they can take a week off and that kind of stuff, and just manage that easily. But then the next level of it is we also then insure those earnings. So depending on what level they're at, either, so if they have an accident, if they fall off their motorbike, or if they fall off a ladder at home and break their ankle, they can't work. Like a normal, it's like an employer. We've effectively insured their income on their behalf, so that, they, depending on the level, everyone is at least insured for accident. So they get up to 6 months of earnings up to a certain level if they have an accident and can't work. So just to protect, they can protect against short-term with credit and long-term issues with insurance. And then we've added, and that also can cover sickness. So if they're sick and can't work and are off for more than a week, then they can actually get a sick pay plan. So that's kind of where we are now. And most of the persona of early workers is customers in the UK is in the delivery space, largely Brazilian, because that's a community that are in that space very heavily, earning 500 to 750 a week. Some of them a little bit higher, but not on particularly low kind of mid-level earnings, working really hard, generally working for 3 or 4 companies at the same time, and varying and through COVID hedging like where the work is coming from, and really at that kind of margin of insecurity. Non-native speakers, no government, no employer protections. A lot of them have families. A lot of them are the one who are the one with the flexible job. So if the kid is sick, they are the one who have to take the time off to take the kid to the doctor, because the wife might be a nurse or a teacher or something like that. So that's, and then the other sector we're working in right now is the home care sector. So people in social care in homes. In due course, we'll move to others, but that's kind of our focus right now.
And is there anything beyond the financial kind of safety net?
Yeah, so we have a few other bits we've built in more recently. So one of the options in some of the bundles is a online telemedicine solution, built out and planned before COVID. Timing is went live about 3 weeks after COVID. Obviously, the general medical side has become more online anyway, so that's kind of. And then we've started to build in some kind of employee perks and discounts and cashback. So we're just at the early stage of that. And they're the kind of things. So what we want to do is bring things that an employee would traditionally have, make some optionality for people, but also really importantly, keep it simple. So being insured isn't about them going and finding an insurance broker and thinking about what cover they have. It's about, we've a membership here. Here's something that we think, here's what's appropriate. Like if you go and work for a company and they have a sick plan, they don't ask you what exactly terms of the sick plan do you want. It's kind of, here's the deal.
Okay. And then, so the other side of that then, if you're a business that engages regularly with, a large population of these transient and flexible workers, can they plug into your ecosystem? One of our key pieces, and we've had a lot of success in this and are just about to start scaling it, is working with those companies to effectively give them a value add for their workers. Either in some cases where they will actually fund some level of the you actually will fund some level of the protection. So the customer gets introduced to Trezeo and they will agree to subsidize a certain amount of membership, either for everyone, or this is where dealing with long tail is always a challenge. So you've got
platforms where maybe 60% of their workers do 2 or 3 hours a week. So, that's just, whereas what they're really trying to focus on is, and what we're focused on is the ones who are really professional. So some of them do need to set thresholds. That's okay. And then others, it is just, and some of this comes down to the level of concern around employee status and things like that. And what is the rest of their model? Some of them it's a trusted referral. It's here's a solution we think will help you. We have some APIs to help simplify things. And then that just allows them to differentiate and also to just show that they care. So in a post-COVID world, yes, we know this challenge for these workers. We're doing things to put things in front of them to help them.
Yeah, so I guess, that feeds into attraction, retention, but also worker utilization, and
it feeds into attraction, retention. It feeds into some of the ones we're working with are building in kind of almost reward type programs. So we'll fund this amount on general, but actually, if you do certain other things, you can actually get a further upgrade.
Cool. So what do you think are the main challenges for the worker, going forward? Is it just being able to effectively plan and look after their own affairs, or are there more challenges that they face?
I think that there's a whole in this world there's a whole range of challenges. There's obviously in terms of just in the moment and in the kind of current, there's the challenge of dealing with that. If they've chosen to work flexibly, and it's not for everyone, then it's dealing with the financial situation you have there. We all know dealing with finances is challenging, even as an employee, but they have an extra layer. And there's one of the key things, there's a huge kind of cognitive load in that. So people are spending all of their kind of effectively capacity they have for finance dealing in the here and now of this week, next week. Therefore, they just don't have the capacity or time or mental capacity to actually think about how do I plan long term. So that's what we're trying to do, is build that. So it's getting to a point where you can then start to put in place the longer term plans. That's one. The other challenges are things like, the world is moving much faster. So some of these roles are also used as a transition. So if we think of COVID, one of the big challenges coming out of COVID is going to be the matching of demand and supply has been even more exacerbated. Like businesses don't know what their demand is going to be. Therefore, it's really hard for them to commit to workers. Workers are sitting, having been furloughed or laid off, struggling to get full-time jobs. Well, actually, if we can do this responsibly, we can actually create a way that actually allows people to re-engage and rebuild.
Yeah, for sure. So what about the technology? Clearly, that's the stuff that we're interested in on our side. So the app, it's super simple, really clean.
So we've the service is mobile only. So it's not mobile first, it's mobile only. So we've most of our customers wouldn't necessarily have a PC. So they might have a tablet, but they're mobile workers who are out and about working. They have mobiles, so it's mobile onboarding. So our solution underneath is an account, it's insurance, it's credit, but it's fully digital, fully online. You can you can onboard to Trezeo in less than 5 minutes. You get a fully functioning account. You get a whole load of other setups. So we're kind of cross-platform from a tech point of view. We're using React Native on the mobile side across iOS, Android, and .NET Core on the back end. So we've built a very, very comprehensive, simple front end app, but on top of quite a complicated piece of managing all of their payments, managing all their earnings, managing credit, and all of the other kind of add-on benefits.
And has open banking and all of those changes been the thing that has kind of opened all this up?
So what, actually that's a very good point about why now. So self-employment, we're not just talking about gig economy and the new stuff. Self-employment's been around forever. So there's a couple of things why now. One, there is that growth in flexible workers, but it is also the advent of open banking, of APIs, even pre-open banking and open banking. So that's a core part. So we use that as part of that 5-minute onboarding, that we're using open banking to take a historic look at people so that we can both help understand their earnings and set that kind of smoothing piece. But importantly, because these customers struggle to access credit, their traditional way of looking credit isn't necessarily the best way. So we also use their transaction data and some other data sources to actually be able to take a fuller view of the customer. And then the other key thing that's changed is digitization. So the movement to digital payments, you know, the reduction in cash, all of that is a big change. It's much harder to do this with
Mm.
cash-based type services.
For sure. Okay. So is there anything else that you'd like people to know? I mean, if people are interested in, you know, if they've got a large workforce, or, you know, if they're just an individual, how do they best go about getting in touch?
So if people, I mean, right now we operate in the UK. We're live in the UK. We're authorized by the FCA. So that's our kind of our operating market. If people work in those kind of sectors, transportation, logistics, care, that's or others with that they think could be relevant. I mean, that's where we've started, and have those kind of workforces, then yeah, we're very interested in having a conversation and see how we can support them. And we use the term independent because there isn't really a clean line there's a clean line in law between self-employed and employed, maybe,
yeah,
but there isn't as clean a line. Like agency workers have a lot of similar issues. So there's people who are a mixture. So in that kind of sector, definitely interested. You know, over the coming months, hopefully we will be building out our tech team more in Dublin. So at the moment we're kind of structured. We've a tech team in Dublin and kind of front end sales and marketing and risk team in London. So we will certainly be doing that. So keep an eye out for roles. You know, we'll have some really, really exciting roles, particularly on the data side as well. As we scale up, we have a lot of data, and we want to make sure we use that data to help the customers.
Great. Well, look, as that stuff comes, we'll be happy to push that out to the community. But look, thanks for that. It's great to hear. I mean, I don't know if it's a consequence of how the world is changing, or just that I'm kind of personally interested in that. But I just seem to be seeing more and more businesses, you know, who are really strongly purpose led and have a good kind of you know, social outcome. So I think what you guys are doing is great, and best of luck with it. So thanks for talking today.
Thank you, David. It was great.
And thanks everyone for watching today. We've decided we're going to keep going with the virtual stuff. It's going to be a mix of these kind of company profiling as well as virtual meetups. So if you want to be kept informed of all of that, you should go to meetup.com and look for Dublin Tech Talks and join our fast growing community. Likewise, you know, you can just like and share anything you see on our page on LinkedIn. So thanks to Gareth for sharing his story today, and we will see you all again pretty soon. Thanks.